If Wales gave us Thomas Young as the poster boy of rugby nepotism, South Africa gave us the Preez saga. Robert Preez Sr was a Springbok fly-half in the amateur era, remembered as sharp, tough, and tactically brilliant. Years later, when he became head coach of the Sharks, it seemed poetic that his sons, Robert Jr., Jean-Luc, and Daniel, were all coming through. The issue? Robert Jr. was made starting fly-half under his father's watch, and fans weren't buying it. South Africa had younger talent waiting in the wings, most notably Curwin Bosch, who many believed had the skill to outplay Robert Jr. But Bosch often found himself benched while the coach's son held the jersey. The criticism was brutal. South African media ran editorials calling the selections biased. Fans booed, and when Robert Jr. lashed back at his critics by calling them cockroaches, it became the defining moment of his career. Instead of silencing the accusations, he'd confirmed the worst fears, that he carried entitlement more than earned excellence. Robert Jr. wasn't terrible. He had a big boot, a calm head, and moments of genuine class. But he never hit the international heights many assumed a Preez would. He became a serviceable pro, moving overseas for stability. But in South African rugby memory, he'll always be the Nepo baby at the centre of one of the country's ugliest favouritism debates. Another name on the what might have been list is Ruben Logan, son of Kenny Logan, the Scottish winger who was capped more than 70 times and married TV presenter Gabby Logan. Ruben came through rugby academies with attention, but never blossomed into the star people expected. Part of his story is the reality of rugby pathways. For every 10 promising academy players, only 1 or 2 become internationals. Ruben carried a name that made people expect he'd be that one. When he didn't, the failed Nepo baby tag was easy to apply. The Burgess name is practically royalty in Northern Rugby League circles, thanks to Andy Burgess and later the iconic Burgess brothers, Sam, Tom, George, and Luke. While Sam became a superstar for England and the Rabbitohs, another Burgess, Luke, struggled to find his own lane. Luke had the bloodline, the body, and the chance to join his brothers in the spotlight. But while Sam's career soared, Luke's trajectory was more modest. He played in the NRL, yes, and even had spells with South Sydney and Salford, but he never became more than a squad player. Injuries and inconsistency held him back, and the constant comparisons to Sam were crushing. Rugby league and union fans alike often lump Luke into the failed Nepo baby category. Not because he was bad, far from it. He was tough, hard-working, and had moments of real grit. But when your siblings and father are legends, being solid just isn't enough. His career serves as a reminder that sometimes the Nepo baby curse isn't about lack of effort. It's about the impossibility of matching a family dynasty. We'll go deeper into them later, but it's worth flagging here that Scotland and England both have clear examples of sons carrying impossible expectations. Adam Hastings, son of Gavin Hastings, the greatest fullback Scotland ever produced, was always going to be judged against a standard almost impossible to meet. Adam has been a perfectly fine player, but in Scottish pubs he's constantly compared unfavourably to his dad. Tom de Glanville, son of Phil de Glanville, England captain in the 1990s, is another case. Despite having the pace and skill to feature at Bath and in the Premiership, Tom is seen by many as a Nepo baby who hasn't yet carved his own international identity. These two show how even moderately successful careers get labelled failures when the surname is too heavy. So why do these names matter? Why are rugby's Nepo babies such a recurring theme? The answer lies in how rugby works. Unlike global sports like football, rugby is still largely community-based, passed down in clubs, schools, and family ties. Famous surnames matter because rugby is tribal. Fans remember the greats and they expect their children to be the same. But that expectation is a double-edged sword. Thomas Young never escaped Dai's shadow. Robert Preez Jr. became a national debate. Luke Burgess was forever Sam's brother. Adam Hastings and Tom de Glanville are compared to their fathers before every game. And the cruel twist? Even when players succeed, as Owen Farrell or George Ford have, people still ask, would they have made it without the surname? That's what makes rugby nepotism uniquely strange. You don't just inherit opportunity, you inherit judgment, and sometimes that judgment is harsher than the game itself. Tom de Glanville had everything you'd want in a young rugby star: speed, a crisp passing game, and the natural flair of a back. He also had the surname of Phil de Glanville, the England captain who lifted the Five Nations trophy in 1996 and played more than 200 times for Bath. The comparison was inevitable. From the moment Tom stepped onto the pitch for Bath's academy, fans and pundits alike whispered, "That's Phil's son." And while Tom grew into a regular for Bath in the Premiership, he never became the player the rugby public seemed to demand. His career has been respectable. He's had England call-ups, played at Twickenham, and shown moments of brilliance. But he's also struggled with consistency and injuries. For every highlight reel run, there were questions about his defensive solidity or ability to command a backline at the highest level. In truth, Tom might have been judged less harshly if he had any surname other than de Glanville. Instead, he's one of rugby's prime examples of a player whose career is decent by normal standards, but seen as underwhelming because of who his father was. Thomas Young's career is almost a case study in rugby nepotism. His father, Dai Young, wasn't just any ex-pro. He was a 6'3" prop who won 51 caps for Wales, toured with the Lions 3 times, and later built a strong reputation as a coach. That kind of resume makes you a giant in Welsh rugby, and it meant that when Thomas came through the ranks, the bar was sky high. Thomas began at Cardiff, but things didn't go smoothly. After showing some promise, he was released in 2014. Harsh proof that even with a famous name, you still need consistent performance. For many players, that would have been the end of the story. But Thomas had a lifeline, most don't. His father, then the director of rugby at Wasps, signed him up. Critics pounced immediately. Would this guy even be here if his surname wasn't Young? It was the classic Nepo baby accusation. And though Thomas became a solid squad man for Wasps, racking up over 100 games, even being named captain in 2019, he never fully shook off the perception that he was only there because of his dad. Internationally, it was the same. Despite some strong club seasons, Thomas earned just a handful of Welsh caps, 4 to be exact. For someone carrying the weight of Dai's reputation, that was a disappointing return. And every time he was overlooked for selection, whispers grew louder. He's not like his dad. He never will be. By 2025, Thomas had rejoined Cardiff's Dragons and remained a respected professional. But in the bigger picture, he'll always be remembered less as a Welsh star and more as Dai Young's son, the player who got a second chance from his father, but never fully stepped out of the shadow. If Tom de Glanville suffers from being compared to a good England captain, Adam Hastings suffers from being compared to a Scottish icon. His father, Gavin Hastings, wasn't just a great player. He was the face of Scottish rugby in the late 1980s and 1990s, a fullback who captained his country, the Lions, and remains one of the most beloved figures in the sport. Adam's rise came with expectation baked in. He showed flair as a playmaker and had a strong boot, enough to make his Scotland debut and earn a regular place in the squad. Yet from the start, he was in Gavin's shadow. Every missed kick, every shaky performance was magnified. Gavin would have nailed that. Even when Adam played well, fans often described him as good, but not Gavin. Injuries derailed Adam at crucial moments, and his move to Gloucester was meant to revive his career. He still plays at a high level, but the reality is clear. Adam is a capable international, but not a legend. For most players, that's fine. But for the son of Gavin Hastings, it's branded a disappointment. Sometimes rugby's Nepo baby story isn't about struggling at the highest level. It's about never reaching it at all. Jack Bracken, son of Kieran Bracken, the 2003 World Cup winning scrum half, had every chance to succeed. Kieran was a legend at Saracens in England, known for his quick service and competitive edge. Jack played for Bristol Bears Academy and looked set for a promising future. But he never cracked through into senior international rugby, nor did he make a name for himself in the Premiership. For many, he simply disappeared from view, the dream of following in his father's footsteps ending quietly. His name pops up now and then in rugby circles, as an example of how even with genetics and connections, the elite level of the sport is brutally unforgiving. These quieter stories, de Glanville, Hastings, Bracken, Logan, show the other side of nepotism in rugby. Unlike Thomas Young or Robert du Preez Sr, these players weren't vilified for favoritism. They weren't seen as stealing jerseys. Instead, they suffered in silence under the impossible expectations their surnames brought. For most professionals, a few caps, a steady club career, or even just playing Premiership rugby is an incredible achievement. But when your father lifted trophies for England or Scotland, that's not enough. Rugby is a sport that mythologizes its heroes, and when the son of a legend arrives, fans expect the legend to repeat itself. When it doesn't, the result isn't just disappointment, it's dismissal. This is the tragedy of the Rugby Nepo baby who doesn't fail spectacularly, but quietly. They're not mocked for arrogance or favoritism, but they're never truly celebrated either. Their careers are judged by a scale that no ordinary player would ever be measured against. Unlike many global sports, rugby has always been deeply tied to family and community. Clubs are passed down from generation to generation, and surnames carry weight. If your dad was a star for Bath, Munster, or the Springboks, people will remember. That memory becomes both an opportunity and a curse. In smaller rugby nations, this culture is even stronger. A young Hastings in Scotland or a de Glanville in England doesn't just join a team, they inherit a story. The fans expect history to repeat itself. If it doesn't, the disappointment is amplified tenfold. That's what makes Rugby Nepo babies so fascinating. It's not that they're bad players. Most of them are good enough to play professionally. The problem is that they're judged against an impossible standard, being the second coming of their father's greatness. It's worth pointing out that not all Rugby Nepo babies fail. Some, like Owen Farrell, George Ford, and Romain Ntamack, have carved legendary careers of their own. They've worn the captain's armband, won trophies, and become household names. But here's the irony. Even when they succeed, the nepotism conversation doesn't go away. Farrell, for example, was recalled to the 2025 Lions tour by his father, Andy, despite poor club form. Cue accusations of favoritism all over again. Ntamack, son of French great Emile, is seen as France's most exciting fly half, but skeptics still ask if he'd have been fast-tracked so quickly without his surname. In other words, the Nepo tag never disappears. For some, it explains their supposed failure. For others, it diminishes their success. In both cases, the surname becomes both crown and burden. So why do some second-generation players fall short? It's rarely just talent. The truth is, expectation can suffocate. Take Thomas Young, a capable flanker who had a fine club career, but the fact that his father coached him made every selection controversial. Or Robert Preez Sr, who wasn't a poor player by any means. But the constant perception of favoritism at the Sharks poisoned his reputation. For others, the issue is sheer comparison. Adam Hastings might have been celebrated as a solid international in another era. But because his father Gavin was Scotland's golden boy, Adam's every mistake looks magnified. Tom de Glanville is the same, an athletic, useful Premiership back, but not the next England captain fans expected. Failure here doesn't mean being bad, it means failing to be extraordinary. And that's a near impossible ask. A recent Spectator piece argued that rugby is full of Nepo babies because the sport is so insular. It's still a tight-knit game, dominated by schools, academies, and family legacies. That structure creates pathways where famous surnames are noticed and nurtured earlier. It also creates resentment because fans assume those surnames open doors at the expense of others. When a Hastings Young or Du Preez falters, it doesn't just feel like an individual disappointment. It feels like confirmation of a system that privileges bloodlines over raw merit. That's why rugby failed Nepo babies attract more criticism than they deserve. They symbolize more than themselves. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.